My name is Jerry Gill. Today is January 14th, 2010. I'm visiting with Lela Sullivan in her home in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Lela, you're a member of a family that's very special at Oklahoma State University, the Bennett family. Dr. Henry G. Bennett, your grandfather, was president of OSU from 1928 until his death in 1951. He served as director under Harry Truman. President Truman is his director of the .4 program. And Dr. Bennett and his wife, if you can help me here, Vera, had 5 children: Henry Jr., Phil, Liberty, known as Libby, Mary, and Thomas, and your father was Phil.
Right.
Okay. Of the living grandchildren, we were talking about this earlier a little bit, Lela. How do you rank in there with the grandchildren?
Okay. There are 18 grandchildren, and I'm the 4th oldest that has that. The oldest grandchild was Jackie Bennett Holmes, who lives in Florida now, and her younger sister Nancy Noxon, who is in Edmond. Then those were my Aunt Josephine and Uncle Henry Bennett's 2 daughters. And then the next son was my father Phil, and I'm one of 3 children. My older brother Henry G. Bennett III, and then myself, and then I have a younger sister, Cora Bell, who is a psychiatrist in Maine, graduate of OSU. And then the next child was Liberty, and they had 4 girls. The oldest was Vera, and so we have Jackie, Nancy, Henry, myself, and then Vera. And then there were 3 younger sisters. And then the twins of my grandparents were Mary Bennett DeLosier, who was married to Uncle Mac, and Uncle Tom, who was married to Emmerdale Swim. And Emmerdale and Tom had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. And then Mary and Mac had 5. Little Mac and Mary DeLosier Harris, who married OSU's golfer's son. Well, he was a golfer too, Labron Harris Jr. And then they had 3 younger sons, Henry, Phil, and Tom. And so there were 18 of us all together. Wow. And the ones that really knew my grandparents were born before 1951. And so there were like 7 of us, I believe.
And how old were you?
I was 10 when he died.
When he died. Before we wanted to discuss, obviously, your grandparents, particularly Dr. Henry G. Bennett, but could we discuss a little bit about your immediate family, and can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up, a little bit about your father? Start maybe with your father.
My father, Phil, was born in a home in Hugo, Oklahoma, when my granddad was superintendent of the schools in Hugo. And he was the 2nd son, and he met my mother, Frances Corbin, in Stillwater in high school, or junior high. And they got married, and then World War II came along, but I have an older brother that was born in 1940, and Henry, and he teaches, nearly retired, in New York State University system out of Corning, and does his major. He went to MIT in Boston 2 years and then came back and graduated in philosophy at OSU.
He was a graduate
of OSU.
And he was also a graduate teaching assistant, was he, for a year or 2?
Yeah, he was. And then I went to OSU following, and graduated in political science in 1963. And then my younger sister, who is 8 years younger than I am, she graduated from OSU, and then married a priest, Episcopal priest, and went to medical school in Dallas. He was in a church in Dallas, and they live in Maine.
So now, you grew up in...
Okay. After the war was over, and I was like 4 or 5, when my dad returned from service in the war, World War II, we moved to Oklahoma City. And that's where I've grown up.
Grown up there.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to Edgemere Grade School and Harding High School for 6 years and loved it.
Great. So then you enrolled at Oklahoma State in the fall of...
Well, I went to New York for the first year and came
okay.
back as a sophomore to Oklahoma State University.
What school did you go to in New York?
Briarcliff.
Yeah. Private school.
Girls' school.
Then you came back in 1960.
60. Yeah.
And can you tell me about your major?
Well,
we were talking about that a little bit earlier, but for the record.
I loved OSU. Partly, I was much closer living near my boyfriend, who was at OU, even though I was at OSU. And I started taking courses I liked, like political science, and then I had a bunch of economics, and then I had a bunch of history. I loved school. Couldn't take enough of it.
Well, can you tell me a little bit, Lily, about your OSU experience and something about the activities and organizations that you're part of?
At school?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I joined a sorority and made friends that we still see to this day in California. It doesn't matter.
Pi
Arizona. It was the Pi Phi.
That's what I'd heard.
You had heard. Our family has lots of Pi Phis in it. Except I will tell you, we have two of my cousins, Bennett cousins, that are Kappa Kappa Gammas. Were Nancy Noxon and Vera.
I talked to Vera. She said she's the first one that wasn't a Pi Phi.
That's right. That's right. Well, Nancy really was, but she was just there a year. So any activity you remember being part of while you're on campus, student activities, organizations? Just having lots of fun, and I loved it.
Let's see, so you lived in the Pi Phi house when you were there, and did you have some favorite places on campus, Lela?
Well,
Hangouts that you go to?
One of my good friends was editor of the OOHRP, Ann Larson Schneider. Anyway, she is now gone on, PhD, and the first woman to have an executive post at Arizona State University in the core. But she, every morning about 7:30 or 8, we would meet at the OOHRP coffee shop and work the crosswords and talk about what the editor was going to do that day. So that was lots of, I was kind of behind the scenes in all the politics. I just loved it all.
Did you write some articles?
Well, no, I just told her. No, I just sort of, got my studies, got good grades, loved it.
Did you hang out at the student union very much?
Student union was a popular, and I will tell you, the Hideaway, it seems like, was just starting down on that Washington. Is it Washington Street or is it Monroe?
Washington, better known as the Strip.
Is that, yeah, now it's the Strip. I mean, it has certainly changed its looks. And we just had a good time.
So there's the swims in the family. Did you hang out and swim some?
Not really. If you know, when I was there, my sorority changed houses. They were on right across from Theta Pond for years. And then my senior year, we moved to the new house, which was really far away from swims, and so if you weren't, we walked. People didn't have, we had like 4 cars in the whole house when I was there, so we just had a great time, great education.
Speaking of education, were there some professors you remember, Lela?
Dr. Hanson, Dr. Donnell, Dr. Knight, I would say those were great.
So Bernal Hanson and poli-sci and...
He was... I thought he was old, but he was young. I saw him recently, and I thought, and they're, one of the funnest things that's happened to me, the connect of OSU, is my son, who did not go to OSU, read in our newspaper a copy of a letter to the editor about the Middle East situation. And he wrote this professor, and the professor said, when you're in Oklahoma, I would love to meet you and your family. And so, through my son, who did not live here, we were guests of a Dr. Raymond Habibi, and I got to know them. And then about a year later, he called and wanted us to dinner, and he had some of my old professors that were still around for dinner. And I thought, this is what it's all about. We just loved it and kept up with him. Yeah.
Lela, can you share a little bit of information about your life after you left Oklahoma State. So you graduated in '63.
I graduated in '63, and then I was fortunate enough to teach for 3 years while my husband finished medical school in the Putnam City Schools.
This is Mark, and this is, and what school did he go to?
He went to the other university. I just wish we had gotten him for track up at OSU. It'd been a lot more convenient. But anyway, then we got out of medical school, and it was the Vietnam call-up for all involved in medicine. And we were fortunate again to be stationed in Nashville, Tennessee, where we had 2 children. And then after that, he decided he wanted to practice in Oklahoma City in dermatology. So we moved back to Oklahoma City and have been happy here ever since.
Lily, you're talking about your 2 children. Did either of them go to Oklahoma State?
No. Our daughter, when she was a junior, she decided she wanted to go to USC and major in cinema theater. And if we told her that was just great. I mean, that was such an outstanding school. If she could get in, that would be great. Well, she got in. The next year, our son, who is 1 year younger, went out to visit her, and he is quite academically inclined. And he said, well, this is just a great place. So we had 2 graduates from USC. And needless to say, it's a fabulous school, academic as well as in the sports arena. But that wasn't easy money just for a Sooner to spend going out of state to that school, and they loved it. They had a great experience.
Lily, you've been active in the community as a volunteer worker. Can you share some of your activities through the years here in Oklahoma City?
I have been fortunate to get involved in the city and in different things. I've chaired Allied Arts leadership area, which supports all the art agencies. I've been president of the YWCA and was involved during my time building the battered women's shelter for the Y. And now for 3 years now, I've been chairing the Oklahoma AIDS Care Fund, which distributes money to agencies and to educate and medical supplies. So it's kind of diverse. But and how could I forget Red Earth, the Native American Institute. I was chaired that for 3 years too, and I loved it. I thought it was fun.
These are all wonderful causes here in Oklahoma City area as well.
We enjoy getting involved in causes where there's a need.
Well, could we maybe change directions just a little bit and talk maybe about your grandparents a little bit, what you remember about them? Okay.
They left us quite a legacy.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, just kind of start with your grandmother Vera. Were you able to spend time with her growing up?
Okay. In thinking of this, especially the last month after, about my grandparents, there are lots of wonderful stories from my parents, their generation, from professors I've known at OSU, from friends I've known where they truly made a difference in their lives. However, my grandparents left, they both left us a legacy that has made an imprint on my life and consequently my husband's life, because we've known each other all our lives, and he knew how important the spirit of my granddad was. And there's 2 or 3 very personal instances that maybe no one knows except Mark and I or my parents. Occasionally, I got to spend the night at grandmother and granddaddy's. Now that is nothing like maybe we know spending the night today and what do we want to do for dinner, or how are we going to entertain the grandchildren.
This
is when I would be like 4 years old, 5 years old, 8 years old. I don't remember before the last, but anyway, we would have dinner, not with Granddaddy, because he was usually busy, and he would come home and we would visit a while. Then he would go to his study that was a quiet room, and my grandmother and I would read or talk. And remember, there were no televisions, and if there wasn't an activity going on, but it was very inclusive. And the funnest thing was, since Granddaddy studied until all hours of the night, I would get to spend the night in their bedroom with my grandmother. So we could read or go down and get water late and bring it up, and I could comb her hair. Well, these were young instances. Then, playing back on that, often at Thanksgiving or Easter or a family time, we would all have dinner together or lunch together in the dining room, and it was very important that all the family be there. Aunt Liberty and Aunt Mary and Uncle Tom and Uncle Henry. Okay, we would. There was a table for the adults, and this time there were 5, 6, 8 grandchildren, and there would be little card tables along the side for the grandchildren. One time we came in, and they were a place setting short. There weren't enough forks for the children. And of course, I was the one that was coming in late. And my granddad, I will never forget this, rather than said, Dora, who helped in the kitchen, would you bring in another place and a chair for Lela? He said, honey, I want you to sit right here with me at the front of the table. Now, to play off that, I thought, oh, look at me. And he said, now it's our job to make sure everybody is included and has everything they need. And you're going to help me make sure this is a fun party. It immediately was inclusive of everybody rather than look at me. So that was a lesson, because I was lording it over my brother and Jackie and Nancy that I was sitting at the head of the table with Granddad. Then another time, which was really shortly before they died, like a trip, they'd come home from Latin America or something, and they were going back to Ethiopia, Egypt for the final trip. And we had the lunch, and then we all went into the living room, and he called all 7 or 8 of us up, and we were sitting around because he had something for us. And he had silver dollars that he wanted us to put in our banks. And of course, he was short again. I mean, there was one other, and I didn't have my hand close enough. And he took me upstairs. He said, come on, Lela, we'll go upstairs into the quiet room. That was kind of a thing where he studied, and we did, or read or planned the next visionary building. And he opened up his drawer and he said, I just brought this back from Ethiopia, and I want you to have it because you were so nice and didn't push and shove to get that dollar. Well, I was just, I still have it. In fact, right now for Christmas, my husband has it being a necklace being made to put on, because he knew it was so special, because he said, to all there's an opportunity if you take your time and aren't pushing. And I will never forget that, because when I went down, I had the prize. Loved it.
Twice.
But he was always inclusive. No one was going to be left out. And I can remember he kept saying, you took advantage of that opportunity. You know, he wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity, and he was inclusive. And that's what I remember.
Well, your grandmother, I understand, was a pretty strong influence on everybody, and I understand that she was a very strong Christian. Did she share her faith with you and the grandkids?
Yes, one night, it was a Saturday night, it must have been a Saturday night, because she taught the girls, the women's Bible class, and he taught the men's. And we went to church. And First Baptist Church in Stillwater. And I got to be a guest at her Bible class. I've never heard so many scriptures in my life since or before. But she lived her faith, because there were some women that she was helping get their education, get through school. And that afternoon there was a big tea at her house, and the women, some of the college students that were in her Bible class, came and washed the dishes. It's not a dishwasher, to work for money or credits to go towards their tuition so they could graduate. Wow. I got to sit and watch them. They were very impressive about what they did, their faith, their belief, their wanting to provide opportunities for others.
Did she ever read the Bible to you?
Oh yes, every time we spent the night, we would select a verse or select a book in the Bible.
And Vera said, Vera Yeager, she remembered, I'm trying to think the name of it, it's the famous Children's Bible Stories book. It said she hadn't read the Bible Stories book.
Well, yeah, but she charged me with learning the books of the Bible because I did not know them. And every time she say, now, let's start, because that was part, the Baptist church, you memorize all the scriptures in the Bible. It was quite, and I do cherish, because to me that was them. When they went to the Holy Land on one of their trips, they brought, it's sitting right in our living room, the Bible they brought me inscribed.
Was she instrumental in helping organize Falls Creek summer camp?
I do not know that.
Okay.
I do not know.
Vera, you talked about that a little bit.
She lived in Stillwater, and she might have gone, because when my family moved to Oklahoma City, then we became active in the Methodist Church here in Oklahoma City. So I was not aware of that, and I don't remember when I was younger.
Do you have some special memories of your grandmother, some special times you spent with her?
Well, watching the girls work in the kitchen so they could go to school to get their education, combing her hair, her reading the Bible, and then I got to select books too, and always making sure Granddaddy was respected in the home for his horrendous schedule he did have to keep. She was very praiseworthy of him.
What do you remember most about her personality and her characteristics?
Strength. She was quiet in many ways. She had a wonderful laugh. And they had a harp in the music room, and she would come in, and I had no idea how to play the harp, but I loved the music tones, and she would take her time and listen and praise. That's what I remember.
That's good. Do you remember some stories that you heard about your grandparents from your father, Phil, and some of his brothers and sisters that would give us some insight into Vera and into Dr. Bennett?
She was the strength of the family unit, because his life was enveloping needs of others. And from the time he was a teacher, well, actually, now this I was told, that he delivered the mail in rural Arkansas when he was 16 because the family was poor, and his education in Arkansas was free, because if you were the son of a Baptist minister, you could go to the Baptist Church College in southern Arkansas. And this is what he did. And then he got his teaching certificate. He was always helping others, organizing. He taught a little bit in Durant and then moved to Hugo as superintendent of schools. And he was busy. And my grandmother, they married before he went back to Hugo, was the strength and the loyalty to the family. The needs of the family, she sort of helped persevere. And that's what I've been told. And really, by all the time I was able to spend the night or be with them, this was what I remember. It was grandmother that was organizing. And then Granddad would come in, but when he was in, he was 100% involved with us all.
I understood that he even helped cook sometimes.
He'd go in the kitchen. I don't remember that, but he would be nosing around. Now, see, I don't remember the cooking. As I remember, he enjoyed food.
And I understand they had a lot of overnight guests, and people would show up and they'd invite them in to spend the night.
I think they were very inclusive. And I thought the house was big. It really evidently wasn't as big as I remembered it, but I can remember that. And then, besides just spending the night there, I do know an older friend of ours in Oklahoma City now. When we moved back from that, this is just on that. When we moved back from Nashville, we met him And he said, I just want to tell you something. Your grandfather, and Mark and I looked at him, was one of the 3 greatest people that's ever lived. And we just said, what? And he said, Jesus Christ, FDR, and Henry Bennett. And we laughed. And we said, oh, what are you telling this tale? And he said, I want to tell you, I was from southeast Oklahoma. I thought I had to get to college. I went on and told him I could play basketball. And Mr. Iba had Gene Smelser tell me, you're never going to make it as a freshman. And he said, but Mr. Iba called me in after I was told I wasn't on even the tryout team, and said, I want you to go over to Whitehurst and see Dr. Bennett, and he will figure out how we can keep you in school. And he did, and while he spent a night at their house, the next thing he knew, he had a place at in the old field house. They were putting up people back from the war to house until they could move into a dorm. And my granddad told him, this is the tale, if you make straight A's, there is a place for you. We are inclusive of everybody who wants to learn. And he said, I graduated in 3 years in education with a master's, because that's all he did. I mean, he knew if he could just keep the A's coming. And now he is a very successful businessman and loyal to OSU.
So, give me the trilogy again. Your grandfather was number 3 in his list. Number 1.
It was Jesus Christ, FDR, and Henry Bennett. And we went, well, what? Because he had been inclusive to him and this was a very smart man. He wanted to go to get an education. And really, isn't that what the land grant school is about? To this day, it should be. You should find a way for everyone to have that opportunity.
Lela, kind of going back to a couple of your comments about the presidential home.
I thought it was real big.
Tell me what you remember about
Playing tag in the front yard, clear down to, it was called College then.
College Avenue.
And just loving it. And going under, they had a carport or something where you drive through for the one car. You should say, it was, like it was fun.
Now the first floor, the kitchen had a large dining room.
The real large dining room, probably seated 10 or 12. I mean, I think, but to a child under 10, and everybody's in there. Okay, then you walked in the door, and then here is the living room that was, I always thought, long and skinny, and had a fireplace at the end. And then behind that was kind of a porch closed in or something. Then there was a music room. Aunt Mary played the harp, and they had a piano and a harp. And then big cupboards with things, because truly the last 3 years of their life they did a lot of traveling, and I can remember it was fun because they had chests, tall old bookshelves and chests where the grandmother loved to shop when she would accompany. That's what she did. She never went on these missions to see or be a part of the program, and she used to write us postcards. Well, today I shopped. And she did. They had beautiful things brought back from the crafts of other countries.
Great story. So now, there was a basement.
There was a basement.
The washing
spooky.
machine, the laundry chute that went down to the basement.
I don't remember the laundry. I bet they did. I remember we ate breakfast in the kitchen kind of with a little table. It was all white with linoleum floor. And then after they died, they tore it down.
So the bedrooms are up on the second floor.
Everything was up on the second floor.
And then there was a study.
The study was probably really, and one bath. I mean, you see
this was sort of Dr. Bennett's area.
That could have been that could have been a bedroom, but it had a big desk and then those bookshelves with glass, old kind of bookshelves behind. That was what was in there, and his study and a little light. And then they had rooms were not as big, certainly not closets as are demanded today. I mean, I've often thought the President's house now, there was talk of a new President's home for the Harkises and from now, and which there probably still is, but he wouldn't have believed how big the grounds were and the home, and how if he were alive today.
Well, Lela, what's your feelings about the home was torn down, and then the Bennett Memorial
I
Chapel?
couldn't believe they tore that wonderful home down, because to me, I mean, I was a child. I mean, it was what, 12, 13, when they did that. I mean, it was empty. I don't think the Wilhelms, when they followed, they stayed in their home, as I recall. And then maybe towards the last, they built the new home of Dr. Wilhelms. I can't remember the years. But I thought, and then, this is something the older generations, Uncle Henry and Daddy, would say. The vision of Granddaddy was so futuristic because he was alive for the student union, and the library plans were in place, but it was all to go together, and it was very important to him. The horticulture, the look, all those magnolias, that was his favorite. He had those imported.
Brought with him from
he loved
Durant,
the
right?
magnolias, and that was all important, and the architecture was all important. And then that was really my first thing. I thought, what is going on up at my school? It was because they tore it down and had a very contemporary, looked like out of the architecture school building. I mean, the chapel. And while religion was very important, I mean, I understand all that, to them, and they would move out to a space away from campus. I just wish they could build a house for the president right where it was, with all those fun memories, and have it look like the rest of the campus.
How did the children? How did your father and the children? How did they feel about the?
They didn't. I can't speak for the other aunts and uncles, but I know my dad was sort of disappointed in the look of it.
Not that they built a chapel.
No, in the
didn't design
look
it to match
of
the
it,
campus.
because that, to him, that was very important, because it was so beautiful. So, but I can't speak for the others, that maybe they had a part in designing it. I don't know.
Well, you were younger, Lela, as you mentioned. Your dad was kind of moving to his .4 experiences. You talked about his traveling and went back. Do you remember anything about his tenure with .4? See, how old were you when he was appointed director? He was appointed director in 1950. You would have been.
He was appointed
49 or 50.
I was like 9 years old. I knew it was very important, because at the time, that made our newspapers here, because it was good for Oklahoma. I mean, it was a star in Oklahoma's hat. I remember a discussion with my dad and my Uncle Henry. They would be together every weekend, and that they were surprised Iowa State University, which was the prima donna agricultural university at that time, that was not an appointment. I mean, it didn't go to, it would go to somebody in agriculture, because in that, but they were very proud. And others were very proud. It was on the paper. So that was a start.
So you're old enough to know how special and
important
your grandfather was.
Oh, right.
Great source of pride to you.
A great pride. I was just proud, because they were my grandparents. I mean, I just loved it.
You talked a little bit about his philosophy. Do you remember any about his philosophy as director of .4? How he felt about
I remember
emerging
him
nations
just telling
individuals?
that when they were going to Latin America. See, why do I keep thinking? But Latin America, to the underdeveloped countries, and he was going to help teach teachers to teach. I can just remember, I'm going to teach teachers in other countries to teach their people how to grow wheat, how to make a better life. He was going to teach others to teach. And that's how he explained it to me. He was so inclusive. That's what I remember from the dining room table. Everybody needs to make sure they have a good time. He was just inclusive of everybody.
It was a shock to the family, the death, the plane tragic accident. How did you first learn about that?
It was like 3 days before Christmas, and my father was sick with hepatitis in bed. I mean, I can remember, and the doorbell rang late at night, and it was Vernon Snell, who was a friend of my parents, that was a writer for the Oklahoman, the Daily Oklahoman, and he, knowing Mother and Daddy, he had seen this come across the AP telegraph, the wire service, and he came to the door, and you know, that's how we found out. It was horrible. I mean, it was such a shock. Yeah.
You remember how your father reacted?
He cried. He was sick and he cried. I mean, it was hard to. You're grateful for friends, family.
But you anticipated having so many more years to enjoy.
Well, right.
Well,
right.
Did you attend the funeral services in Gallagher?
The one in Gallagher, the one in Gallagher, Iba, it was, you know, it was overwhelming. It was just overwhelming because how do you say, it was so public. It was just a big thing in Gallagher, Iba.
It's packed.
It was packed. That's what I remember.
You remember anything about any of the memorial comments or anything about the service?
No, no. I remember Senator Kerr was there, I believe, because he came up and was hugging my dad. I hardly remember. You're sort of overwhelmed at something that big for something was so personal. I mean, their lives to me were very special as a grandchild. And then to have the whole, you don't realize how many people care. Even to this day.
Well, speaking of that, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but from your perspective and your personal knowledge of your grandfather Bennett, what, in your opinion, is his legacy? All of his life's work. What's his major legacy left?
Opportunities provided to many. I mean, opportunities he has given others by his leadership, by the atmosphere. In fact, I will just tell you something really cute. The week before, my mother died unexpectedly in an accident. And the week before, Mark and I took her to Stillwater. She was 91. And we put her in a wheelchair and went all over the campus and ended up eating at the Ranchers Club and in the student union, which she had not been to. And you know, you park and you have to go down that tunnel. I mean, it's not very conducive to going to a nice dinner. And we had her, and she was having the time of her life. And 2 or 3 times in the tunnel going up, we met just people working in the union or students. Every one of them, is there anything you need? Can we just happy? And she said, it's the same as it was when Dr. Bennett came. The inclusiveness and the friendliness. He gave others an opportunity, and they have taken it to heart. And that's what I think he left, opportunity.
Then how important was education to him? I mean, obviously he was an educator, but
I think he realized that he had been told, get to that college where you can better yourself, learn. And I think that just developed more and more. And with that came the thrust and the belief we're all here to be better people, and this is how, and it should be an opportunity for everyone to be better. And that's the learning part of it. He believed to mentally be a better person makes you a better person. It was always learning. Like mine wasn't a silver dollar, mine was a Maria Theresa from Austria that the Ethiopians were using. See, I mean, there's always learning to make you a better, but it was, his mission was to provide opportunity. And I believe that's really the land grant institutions across the country are supposed to do that.
Well, he worked just unbelievable hours and
he did.
unbounded energy.
I can vouch to that.
What was his, what do you think was his motivation? I mean, what was really important to him in life that he was able to give so passionately of his time and his life?
He just did.
Do you know maybe where that come from, that motivation, that drive?
Growing up in Arkansas poor, and his father became blind. I don't know what that means in today's standard. And they didn't have money, and he carried the mail to the neighbors to be paid for the family. I don't know how somebody is so pushed and shares that desire. Maybe he went to Columbia University when I think he was at Durant at Southeastern. Took a year to get his master's and PhD, his graduate work. I don't know what pushes you when you have children, a wife that's just taking care of your children, and yet he was very loyal to family causes. I don't know where that comes from. I just know he thought everyone should be included in the opportunities available, which is kind of an interesting concept.
Well, Lela, what do you remember about your grandfather Bennett in terms of his office? Did you ever go to his office?
Whitehurst.
Whitehurst.
To pay tuition when I was when I was a student. I don't remember. I mean, I knew it was at Whitehurst. I don't remember that. I don't remember his office.
Okay.
I just...
Vera had told some stories about actually going over, and he allowed her to come to his office when he was, as long as she said just to be quiet because I got work to do, and she'd just play in his office. It was pretty unusual.
I would have bet that, because he was always, you could always be with him. You know.
Well, kind of getting back to his characteristics, you were talking about earlier, I've heard and you indicated he really did need a lot of sleep.
He did.
Work late in the night, he would get up early and leave. Can you attest to that?
I can attest to that soundly, because we'd go in and tell him good night, and then he'd come in and give us a kiss, but his light was on all the time. And he could focus on things just in conversation. And you thought he was real interested.
I heard he had a lot of nights. I mean, he might average 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and that's all he needed.
And get up the next day and go on. That's right.
And I heard it was excellent remembering names.
Now I don't know. He always knew my name. I don't know. I don't know. I never saw that, but I wouldn't doubt it. I just very personable, and very more than that. What he was aware of everything in the room. Like there wasn't enough places there, rather than, he just sit down.
Wherever took charge and
took charge of making that okay. Same thing as the silver dollars. He did it, not like he makes it okay.
Like his wife Vera, he was a strong Christian.
He was.
And as you indicated, he taught the men's Sunday school class, First Baptist Church, while Vera, his wife, taught the women's class. Did you ever hear him? I heard that he would be sort of a lay preacher, preach a lot of times, teach Sunday school class. Did you ever get a chance to hear him teach or preach?
I was in the womenmes. No,
you
no.
To Vera.
I listened to grandmother. No.
We talked, trying to get a feel for Henry G. Bennett, the man and the family person, the non-public part of him. Do you remember hearing any personal stories about about him from your father and aunts and uncles that resonate with you?
No. I can just tell you, one semester, and I thought I always made good grades, and I did, but one semester I had a 393 because I got a B in bowling. And my dad said, well, why did you let that happen? And I fired back something like, I thought they were good, or something like a 20-year-old would do. And he said, your grandfather would want all A's. So I am sure Granddaddy wanted his children to have good grades.
And probably said the very same thing to them.
That's right? Exactly right. So that might give you a little. They never.
You alluded to delivering the route. Any stories from the, sort of the early family stories you remember about Arkansas?
He had 2 sisters, I believe, and Aunt Stella, I can't remember. He rode horseback or something. I mean, it's just like you hear these things, delivering the mail. And then I guess he fell off his horse or something and broke his ankle and couldn't continue. And he went to, that's the next year he went to college. And then he got a job in, I think he taught a year in Arkansas, and maybe that's where he met grandmother. And then he moved to, I'm just trying to think what I've been to Durant to teach. And then Hugo needed a superintendent, and he applied and got that. And that's where my dad was born. And then they moved back to Southeastern, and he was there 8 or 9 years. And that is one thing I can remember, a family discussion, why he was so outstanding, for my mother would really toot his horn, is because before he came to OSU, there was president after president after president, depending on, we were a young state, and whoever was, they'd fire the president, and the Board of Regents would tell the governor, we want so-and-so, and it'd last 6 months or 2 years, and it was unstable. And when he came, he stayed. And that's where it started growing as a major university.
For 23 years. That's pretty good tenure, isn't it?
Yeah.
You were talking about his father, Thomas, or Tom. That was a Baptist minister.
Thomas Jefferson was his name. Isn't it funny how they used to name after Thomas Jefferson?
Did he moved to Stillwater with him? He was still alive when they moved. Is that right?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I never heard that. I have no idea.
Okay.
You mean that he brought him there?
I wasn't sure if he was still alive or not.
I don't remember him at all. So that would have been. Well, see, I was born in 41. That would have. I don't remember that at all.
Did Dr. Bennett and your grandfather ever give you any practical advice? Have a chance to sit down with you and a little bit about philosophy of how to live your life, or practical
No,
advice?
he never was formal like that. By his example, you knew it. Now it's our opportunity to make sure everybody has what they need and is having fun from the dining room. That's how he lived it. So, and I remember that. And to be inclusive. And one of the things that has come to me from Granddad, through my dad, was when he was so proud of the student union, and I think that must have been like 47 or 48. I can't remember that. And that there was an Indian artist, I never knew an Indian at that age, when I was 7 or 8, named A.C. Blue Eagle, and my granddad had commissioned him, quote, for his education, to paint the murals all along the walls inside. And no paint, no wallpaper, but A.C. Blue Eagle did it. And as gratitude, A.C. Blue Eagle went on to be one of our foremost Native American artists in the middle 20th century, and made an enormous painting for him. And anyway, my dad has it with the pictures from A.C. Blue Eagle, and now I have it. And
you have that now?
I'll show it. But he said, always be inclusive. Everyone, I mean, that he lived what he really felt. So I don't remember any sit-down talks. I just remember it takes a lot of work to be a great person.
Does any of the Bennett family ever get together, the extended members of the family, any reunions you have occasionally?
3 years, no, let's see now, 4 years ago, they had Thanking Paul Bass, kind of a gathering in Arkansas together. And probably half the family came.
Right.
Yeah.
The Bennett statue that looks over the mall and kind of...
I love it.
It said where you can see the library and the student union both.
I love that. That's awesome.
How does the family feel about that?
I'm very proud. Very proud. I just wish they had them of all the presidents. Because that gives you really a connect. Grandchildren have had their pictures made. It's very much of a connect.
Were you there at the ceremony when they unveiled it?
But it's a connect. There's also something else very proud at the Historical Society on over here by the Capitol. They have an area.
The History Center.
History Center. Yeah, the new History Center. So that's kind of fun.
Great. And then, of course, there's the Bennett Memorial Chapel, Bennett Hall. There's a lot of...
Bennett Hall's still there. It was there.
I lived there.
I mean, it's still there. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to remain connected to Oklahoma State University through the years personally?
Well, yeah. Your loyalty is always there. Your love is always there. But I will say our family. Mark feels very strongly that he has a wonderful education given to him by Oklahoma University, and he's very loyal. However, he is very proud of OSU. Our children chose another university, and to all universities, we are life members, just because we think, like Granddad, education is the way to take advantage of opportunities in life. And now I feel real connected because Burns and Ann are such close friends. But we have enjoyed being a part, and think one of my granddad's first things he did, you might not know this, when he became president in the late 20s, there was a professor there in art, and he just came to teach art. There was no art department, and his name was Dole Reed, and he made him chairman of the art department and said, build one. And they still have this art department, and the legacy is now that Dole Reed, the daughter, has given the estate in Taos, New Mexico for students across the board at OSU.
And she has.
So that's a fun thing for us to watch, because it's a cycle. OSU grabs you by your cowboy boots.
What, you spoke this earlier, Lela, I'll ask you maybe one more time. How did Dr. Bennett influence your life? You said earlier that he was a very important influence in your life. Truly,
Mark and I have been love to be involved in the community, and that's one way we feel we can be inclusive to those around us, and maybe in some way provide opportunities for a good life. And besides the shelter, we know that works, the haven for people in trying situations. We feel the encouragement AIDS has made over the last few years. My husband's a chairman of the trustees at the Oklahoma City Zoo, and that is a wonderful thing for all Oklahomans. It's a nationally ranked. There's just, and my granddad and that legacy, the spirit, left us to be better people. You know, we're kind of private, and my husband and I are, but we're very, very proud of having a little bit of that spirit in us. And things in our house remind us, things that have come to us.
You refer to yourself earlier as a silent member of the Bennett family.
Well,
meaning?
I would rather live that legacy than talk it. Maybe. And his legacy is definitely there. He was a vision. He didn't do or talk about what he was going to do or saw. He lived it. He actually was motivated, directed, and focused on what he wanted to do, provide opportunities for people to be better people. I think so many times people do things for a certain reason, egotistical or motivated by other influences. His was a belief in a better life. And he didn't think, is this going to play this way or that? As far as I'm concerned, he believed in what he was doing. And I think that is the key to why he lived it. And maybe that's why he could get along without sleep. Maybe. I think others, as it goes down generations, you look and think, oh, that was like, he was so special. And they talk, their stories become not diffused, but maybe a little different.
Embellished a little bit.
Embellished,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, they still think of themselves as being touched by him or a part of him, rather than doing things themselves to make things happen. I just think he lived what he truly believed. People say he was a politician.
We might pick on this. I mean, I've heard that in the good sense of the word.
Well,
politician,
he knew how to get things done. He knew he had. But there again, if you believe in something, you're not afraid of what will people think.
He was Paul Bachelor would describe him as a practical dreamer. He had the vision, or maybe it's a better word. But what was it would? And I'm just asking you. I think I hear you saying, but he was able to put those dreams, those visions, those goals into plan. And you had
Right.
And that's what we were talking about a little earlier when you said what drove him. This is what you're saying.
Yeah.
This is what he's talking about. He had this vision for improving people's lives and through education and opportunities.
Right.
And that's what directed and drove him.
I think it drove him, and I think, and he enjoyed it. I can never remember, maybe I was too young, him being stressed out. Like Vera, getting to play while he worked. Well, he works, I mean, he focuses. Or having me spend the night. I mean, it was, he knew what he was about. It'd be a better world if everybody was like that.
Knew who he was and whose he was.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh.